Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm the football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike the Cranky Fan. And the Giants have fallen to 2-10 after a loss to the Lions in overtime, an exciting game, in a very unexciting portion of an unexciting season. And Monday morning, we woke up to the news that Shane Bowen has been fired by Mike Kafka. He claims it was my decision in a press conference. We're going to get into all that. Shane Bowen, the game itself, and of course, Malik Neighbors, who's been on IR and in silence for some time, broke that silence and then deleted it. Cranky Fan, how you doing?
A typical miserable weekend, Grump. First time in 36 years, I walked out of the swamp at halftime watching the Gators get their ass kicked. And, that might have been the highlight of the weekend when you get to the Giant game yesterday, the frustration. Um, you know, Getting your ass kicked is one thing. When it gets so bad, you kind of like smirk a little bit. But when you lose games in the water torture way we do every week with this Giant team, it's just more and more painful. And this was just, you knew it was coming. They build out to the lead, and you just know in the back of your mind, how is this defense going to screw it up? What mistakes are we going to make? What coaching blunders are we going to make to, perpetuate this losers lose season?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that this loss stands in a way where I can't get too mad about it. I mean, and I did get mad in the moment. I'm
Mhm.
not happy about it or anything like that, but I can't get as mad about this as I can like the Broncos game or the Cowboys game, because at this point in the season, winning this game would have been fun, would have been awesome, would have done nothing for us. I mean, other than
Right.
I mean, and in 2 years, how much are we going to remember from this game? In 4 years, how much are we going to remember from this game? In 6 years, we're gonna be like, oh yeah, that game with the trick plays, that's crazy. Jameis Winston was quarterback. We're really not gonna remember much of anything because it doesn't do anything for the season. The season's over. Coach is fired. So, and also, this was the game that I believe what you said was, I think I had this way back in April or May in permanent marker that we were losing this game.
Hmm.
So to even be in the situation where you're down to the wire or and in overtime was something I would have signed up for 10 times out of 10.
Oh,
So the fact that they ended up collapsing in a way that is sort of funny in that way. If you're not a Giants fan, if you're just a football fan, you're like, oh, of course the Giants blew it that way. At the end of the day, it just doesn't hit the same way. It certainly hits, um, but a shot to the solar plexus and a
if
shot to the nuts do not feel exactly the same, do they?
yeah, I mean, if you're the objective fan who has no skin in the game, whether you're not a Giant fan or a Lions fan or a gambler, that's one of the five most exciting games of the season. I mean, think of all
It's
the
got to be. It's got
all
to
the,
be.
the trick plays, all the exciting, the Jameis thing. He's got a thing which people love to watch. A comeback, a 70-yard run in overtime, all of this stuff. I mean, that was a great game if you're not just, getting perpetually your nuts jammed up your throat.
um, but at the end of the day, Shane Bowen becomes a sacrificial lamb anyway, and I did compare this to the Broncos and the Cowboys game and saying it doesn't feel as bad, and it doesn't, right? Those were, I mean, the Cowboys game was like inexcusable out of Shane Bowen,
Mhm.
right? The way they played coverage just completely went into a shell against, it really required a lot out of Russell Wilson to keep them in that game, and and like time after time, they let it happen. The Broncos game, you give up that many points in a quarter is just pathetic. This game, I mean, you're playing against a really, really good team, a really good offense, well coached, and weapons galore on offense. And the defense is hurt. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau didn't play in this game. Paulson Adebo didn't play in this game. Tyler Nubin didn't play in this game. That's a lot. And then mid-game, we learned later on that Dexter Lawrence is dealing with some kind of injury that they're not really disclosing. Mike Kafka called it a nick. Um, it was enough to keep him off the field for a majority of snaps as opposed to his normal workload. I forget what the snap share is, but I mean, he's usually way up there. He was down to like 70% or something in this game.
Yeah, and actually we'll give a Gary to Fox color commentator, quick Vilma, because
Oh,
right
Jonathan
before,
Vilma, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because normally I'm not the biggest fan. He talks way too much, but he did say right before the long touchdown in overtime, Dexter Lawrence is still not on the field. Where is he?
Hmm.
I don't even see him on the sideline, and then boom, he was off to the races right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but I mean, and also I don't think that Shane Bowen really called, and I didn't watch the film yet to like break down everything they did on defense Monday night for us, and had a long Monday day because of the Bowen firing. Um, but I got to see. But I didn't get the feeling that they were just like falling into like a soft zone
Mm-mm.
at crucial points in this game. If anything, actually, I think the Lions were fighting for their lives in this game because they just weren't running the ball. I mean, that was almost like
Yeah,
malpractice that they only ran the ball 20 times, because at no point were the Giants able to stop it at
yeah.
all. I mean, they just could not stop the bleeding. So they threw, I think they went like 40 to 20, 40 passes against 20 rushes in this game, which is just inexcusable given how well they were running. 42 to 20.
And they weren't behind like, Denver was behind too. I mean, they were behind most of the game, but it was manageable. And,
It was a
you know,
close game.
and this is a defense that hasn't stopped the run all year. I mean, we've surpassed Cincy now as the worst rushing defense in the league. If you kind of stick to that commitment, eventually something's going to pop, or at least you're going to be moving the chains consistently. And um, Goff was not impressive in the first half.
Hmm.
So all these things kind of into account. It seemed like it just took them a while to kind of collect their collective heads and do what was needed to beat us.
Yeah, and Lions receivers were dropping some passes. I thought Cordell Flott had a pretty damn good game. But at the end of the day, Shane Bowen got fired this morning. Yesterday, or I'm sorry, Sunday after the game, the post game press conference, they had asked Mike Kafka, about Shane Bowen and the defense, because of course the media's job is to latch onto narratives and see if this is part of the narrative, or see if it's not part of the narrative. And Mike Kafka yesterday said, I have complete confidence in Shane Bowen, and that confidence, I guess, only lasted until 9 a.m. But of course, like, you know, you're walking off the field. You've had your whole week set on that last 60 minutes, or I guess reality, real time, 3 hours. Your whole week was building towards that 3 hours. That 3 hours just ended. You just lost in a heartbreaking fashion. You're not thinking about anything yet. You're still kind of decompressing. So I don't think anyone really has anything too thoughtful to say in a post-game press conference that's not like emotionally heated. And what we've seen from Mike Kafka for sure so far is that he's not let his emotions change any of his demeanor that I've seen. He's been pretty stoic. Um, so, I don't really pull too much from that. But at the end of the day, Shane Bowen gets fired. Do you think it was justified? Should Shane Bowen be fired, period? Not today, whenever. Does he deserve to be a defensive coordinator?
Um, we have the 31st defense in the league. We have the worst defensive rush defense in the league. We've blown a bunch of fourth quarter leads. I know there's injuries. I know this and that, but at the end of the day, somebody has to be held accountable for it. So, if Brian Dable survived this season and he was to come back next year, they needed to make a change at defensive coordinator. I just find it interesting they do it right now at this
Okay.
moment. Um, there's one of two things I think it's going on. One is we have noted on this show time and time again how this team worries too much about what people think about them. And
Mhm.
I think that narrative was really growing. It turned once Brian Dable was fired and, the attention turned to looking for the next scapegoat and looking for the next villain. And Shane Bowen became that villain with the fans, with the media. And the worst thing you can do when you're running an organization or being a coach is you want your pound of flesh. And I think that they threw Shane Bowen to the Lions, meaning us, the fans, the media, to kind of get some of the heat off of them. And I think that's a terrible way to run a franchise. But I also think there's something else going on, and this is the Cranky fan conspiracy of the week. I
Always good, by the way, when somebody has a conspiracy every week.
Yeah, sponsored by nobody because we have no sponsors. Um,
Sponsored by Reynolds aluminum foil.
I have the magic underwear on too. Don't worry. Uh, I have a very strong suspicion that a decision has been made, and it might have been made at the time or even yesterday, that Mike Kafka will be back next year as the head coach of this team. And I think Mike Kafka is now empowered to make decisions that most interim coaches would never do. If you have a guy who's a placeholder head coach for the final 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even 7 weeks left in the season, making major decisions like firing your coordinators is a big deal. You almost never see it happen. And I have this suspicion that, Kapka's a guy that got some interest from other teams to be a head coach. He survived the Kafka Dable Cold War, with him getting basically getting benched as play caller and offensive coordinator, and he's last man standing. And I think that you know the relationship with Kafka and with the Maras more than Joe Shane, I think, is such that they there is some sort of agreement that has not been announced that he will be back next year, and he is starting right now with his assessments of everything. And I think that there's a toxicity on this team, especially on the defensive side. We're going to talk about Malik Neighbors' tweet in a minute. We're going to talk about just seeing body language of this team. That I think, knowing it's his team going forward, he's going to start today by cutting the cancer out, and he did it.
That's interesting. I mean, I think it's at this point among Giants fans, a heated debate as to whether or not Mike Kafka even deserves a shot at the interview process. I think some people are ready to wipe away everything. I mean, of course, right? Like there are Giants fans that want the team to be sold. So of course there are fans that want to wipe everything away. I think also there is some level of justification in feeling like um there's nothing to really hang your hat on from this group, right? Like they don't really appreciate anything that Joe Shane had done. I mean, that sounds like I'm defending him. They just
No,
they
no,
don't feel
no.
like that Joe Shane had done enough. They don't feel that Brian Dable has done enough. They're ready for just a whole new switch. Just this isn't working. Forget this. I don't want to try and keep this Frankenstein, this wheel from this car and this engine from this car. Forget all that. Just buy a car. Let's just go out and buy a new car. It's time to buy a car. So and then I get that. I do think it's interesting, and Mike Kafka's I think what he said is that when he had first taken over the job for Brian Daboll, he didn't want to make too many rash decisions too quickly. Like he really wanted to get his feet underneath him, get settled, and then not make any emotional decisions, just make rational ones. So that was his justification for the timing, I think, and
It's
not
too
being,
weak.
which is interesting, right? Because Brian Dable gets fired on the heels of, you know, the narrative of this season isn't that the offense can't score points or anything like that. The narrative of this season is that they
They
keep
blow leads.
blowing fourth quarter leads multiple times, multiple scores, right?
Hmm.
Um, and of course that falls at the feet of the head coach, but it certainly falls at the feet of the defensive coordinator.
Hmm.
And Brian Dable was fired and nothing happened to Shane Bowen. So I mean, it is kind of interesting. And I don't think we really need to have the Brian Dable discussion, but like, I could check off a whole checklist of, there's a grocery list of reasons that Brian Dable should be fired. I mean, he couldn't get along with his coaches. He didn't seem to give a shit about anything but the offense. He just kind of hired people and walked away, kept his
Go
hands
back
out of
to
it.
go back to all of our old shows, which we go over that over and over and over again. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, but it is interesting that the offensive guy got fired and the defense kind of remained intact. So I mean, this seemed like the writing was on this wall
Mhm.
for a long time, but specifically the moment Brian Dable was gone, it was just like, well, this is just over. In terms of Mike Kafka's role in all this, and you think that Mike Kafka and the Maras seem to have a relationship where what's interesting about Mike Kafka is that he was like the lone, like not a Dable guy. I don't know about lone, but that
The key.
hiring was was praised because he was a risk move to hire. He seemed and it it seemed like something where you were building towards the future, right? We're going
Mhm.
to get this young guy as a quarterbacks coach with a lot of promise coming from a good offensive tree in the Andy Reid tree, and we can groom him and he can be the offensive coordinator once he's ready to take it from Dable. And it's a future investment. It wasn't just I've worked with this guy, I can trust him, and if things go really well, he'll probably bail, or he'll just do what I say and he just works for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, here's
so
my
what's
thinking too. Here's my thinking
well,
too.
we look back at that and we praise Dable for that, but wonder how much influence that had from anybody else. I mean, we didn't learn until the very end that Jason Garrett was pretty much forced onto Joe Judge by John Mara directly, saying that
Mhm.
he strongly should consider hiring him because of his wealth of experience and blah 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 blah, and basically pressured a first-time head coach into hiring someone he didn't want.
Yeah, and I'm gonna extend the conspiracy theory a little further too, is that I think this was a decision made by Kafka with the endorsement of the Maras because I still don't think that Joe Shane is guaranteed to be back here next year. And if the jury is out on him inside the building, are they letting Joe Shane make which I think are major decisions? Because hear me out for this for a minute. Yes, everybody wanted him out. Everybody knew he wasn't going to be back next year, even if whatever new coach is going to be. But I always think when you get rid of somebody, especially during the middle of the year, my first thought is, okay, now what? What are you going to do next? Because I do not believe in the phrase, it can't get any worse than how it's going on now. That's bullshit. I've seen it time and time again with my teams and other teams that it can be a lot worse. A bad head coach is better than a non head coach. A bad defensive coordinator is better than, well, let's pick the linebacker guy, coach to become the defensive coordinator. So I still feel that this was a reactionary move. It's not there. And again, we're 7 games left, 6 or 7 weeks left in this season. This is not. Well, there's only 2 weeks left. We'll limp into the final. We still have a month and a half. We still have 3 home games left.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yes.
almost half of your home slate is still here. And I know that all the tickets are sold, but you know, when you're throwing into the towel for this year, and I don't believe for 1 second firing Shane Bowen is a move to salvage this season. To me, you're throwing
Oh
in the
no.
towel. You're done. And if you're doing that, and we're playing who? We're playing the Cowboys. We're playing the Vikings. We're playing teams that
Patriots.
well, I'm talking about teams at home teams
Oh yeah.
alone that you're going to see either empty seats or you're going to see 60,000 Cowboy fans, and that's not good. So I really think that, the two things are at play. I think it was the decision to get rid of him. I still think it's just a little, I'm getting my pound of flesh. I know we need a scapegoat. We need someone to blame for this, and get rid of him right now is the easy cosmetic move to make. But again, I'm still thinking that, this is a plan. This is a Kafka move to uh, fix some of the culture that's been broken on this team, and you cut it off. You cut the head off of that to move forward.
So you think that it's Kafka out for the pound of flesh, or the fans out for the and just feeding it to them, or Joe Shane, or ooh?
I think it's a combination of I think it's Mara with the pound of flesh, but I think Kafka is in used that knew the writing was on the wall for it and said, hey, he using the energy of Kafka wanting to using the energy of Mara to get rid of Shane Bowen for the pound of flesh to get this snowflakiness taken care of. But he saw it as an opportunity that I could use this to start making my moves for next year.
Interesting. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure we're gonna find out at the end of the season when
Mhm.
stories come out, people get fired. Um, So, and the stories might be huge, right? If Joe Shane is out, then we'll hear more.
Mhm.
If Joe Shane's in, then we'll hear what we're allowed to hear, and
And
that seems to be
and
kind of how things have trickled out for a while now.
and one more thing, Grump. We all assume that Shane Bowen was getting fired at the end of the season. We all assume that the next head coach would want to bring another defense coordinator. That's not 100% guaranteed. He could have survived
Well,
all of this. It would have been, they would have burned the building down, but this way you're ensuring he's gone.
I mean, I guess so. That's
'Cause-
certainly true, but I mean, at the end of the day, Shane Bowen was only hired because nobody really wanted to work with Brian Dable. People declined to do interviews. They took jobs other, but like they literally didn't even
right.
want to entertain the interview, and they were kind of left with whoever would take the job. Um, so I don't know that anyone around was like, yeah, maybe that Shane Bowen guy, like or a new head coach coming in. In fact, if a new head coach came in and did what Brian Dable did when he first got here and just assumed that Patrick Graham was going to stay and just gave the special teams job back to Thomas McGee because he doesn't give a shit and didn't
Mhm.
want to waste his time doing interviews or care about special teams or defense, then I mean that should be red flag number one. That's going from abusive X to abusive X. Um, so I would hope that he would have been fired anyway. But I mean, it is a good point. You don't have any assurances unless you do it yourself, right?
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, right? Like in terms of how I feel about the Shane Bowen firing, is that it's completely justified. He's not my style of defensive coordinator. I do think that he was hampered. I mean, this whole roster has limped its way into year 5, year 4. What are we in? Year 4.
Year 4.
Um, with only surface level talent. I mean, with that is that they've assembled a roster finally that is an average-ish starting roster, and then once somebody gets hurt, they're just not good. But I think that the defensive depth is at a worse spot than the offensive depth. You have a decent running back room with a rotation of guys that are all serviceable, with two guys that you're really happy about.
Well,
Your tight end room is not so terrible. Your starting 5 offensive linemen are all pretty good.
I mean, the bottom
And
line,
even so, like you had to operate without a starting center for a couple weeks. You didn't really drop off too much in that regard. You have 3 good quarterbacks, or whatever, 3 quarterbacks you were comfortable naming a starter every single week. So
the
that's
bottom,
that's
yeah,
certainly something. But at
the
the end of
bottom
the day,
line,
the
Grump.
defense has sucked. It's been
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, I mean the offense is mid-pack in a lot of overall team statistics, and we're now at week 10, so
Hmm.
it's not a small sample size. You're at this point in the season, you kind of know what a team is, and it's mid-pack considering, you know, think about it. We started with Russell Wilson, then we went to a rookie, and then we went to a third string. He's technically a third string quarterback, and they put up numbers. There are games where they put up a huge yardage. They score points. I mean, you can make fun of Dallas's defense, how bad it was in that game. You can make fun of this, that, and the other, but you, as an offense, still have to execute and exploit those bad defenses. And we kind of have been able to. It's just it's just a shame that this defense is woefully bad and caused due to being very thin and key injuries at bad spots and just being bad. I mean, Shane Bowen is some of the blame, but I think it's yeah, I believe I believe if I was the GM or I was the owner, I would have fired him at the end of the season.
Hmm.
I don't like making changes mid-season. I just think more damage is done than, staying the course and making your changes at the proper time.
Well, would you have fired him at the end of last season?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'd feel the
I would
same
have
way.
I would have fired Dable too, quite frankly.
And that's fair. But even if you don't, in my opinion, I think even if you don't fire Dable, I think that um
The natural move is okay.
well, I
You
mean,
have
like the story kind of pivoted away from like the Wink Martindale doesn't get along with his coordinators after last year. Like you know how like, if it didn't happen 5 minutes ago, no one remembers. I think you probably could have gotten some good interviews last year. Of course, I'm saying that off the cuff, and people listening to this are going to look back and be like, there were absolutely no good hires. So that wasn't going to happen. But I do think that even, and of course, I would have fired Dable last year too. But I do think that there was some level of like moving on from that. The story was more about getting a quarterback, and the story was more about, yeah, I mean, the story was more about Brian Dable was getting his quarterback at that point. And he had that moment where he did all the play calling last year and Mike Kafka did nothing. So there was no rift between him and him. There was no rift between him and Shane Bowen. There was no, it just, they moved on from that. And
I disagree. To me, there was a rip because he wasn't play calling.
but what I'm saying is there was no juicy like moment like there was with screaming at Mike Kafka and taking the play calling away and giving it back. There was no
Yeah.
back and forth with Wink Martindale. I mean, the dramatics of it all that had
Right.
subsided, and maybe you could look back at that in that moment at that time. You could perhaps be like, oh, it really was just like a big deal between him and Wink Martindale. They just don't get along. Those are
Fair
two
enough.
alpha personalities. You could at least have that perception and possibly move on from Shane Bowen and hire some other people. Maybe.
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe. Of course, I'm not in league circles, so but I mean, at the end of the day, Shane Bowen, even if he had a talented roster with talented depth, is just not a style of defensive coordinator I think works in the NFL. To start the season, it was very much a lineup and play defense. Didn't like to bring pressure too much. You know,
Espe- I,
sat
it,
in man coverage way too much,
I
and
think it's
didn't
a
disguise
miscalculation.
anything. Yeah.
I think it was a miscalculation of the talent that he had because we all thought coming into the season we're going to have this great pass rush. We have Burns, we have Thibodeau, we have all these guys coming. We just drafted Abdul Carter, so I think that might be just a miscalculation by coaching of like this on pure talent alone. They're going to create this pass rush. I don't need to create situations for them, and I got away from them too soon. And before you know it, then there's film on these guys, and it makes it harder and harder to scheme your way to a good defense.
Oh, 100% agree. And also, if you ever have the thought at the NFL level that like the players are going to elevate you to the point where you don't need to coach strongly or worry about anything, then you're already at a behind the bar or whatever, behind the eight ball, I
Play,
guess.
I say this all the time. Players got to play, but players got to be put in the best position to play. So it's a
It's
two
not
tier thing.
college. You're
Yeah,
not at the top of the pack of, you know,
physical
your
mismatches.
conference. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Where you can just, and also just, with no cap, recruit and purchase everything that you can, the way you kind of can in college and whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, at the NFL level, the margin between best team and worst team is pretty slim.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I at this point, I would say my only concern with getting rid of a major coordinator is what that does to the locker room. And for you and me, that's an impossible thing to answer. We're not in it. We don't
Right.
know these guys. We don't talk to them, and we don't know what the
Well,
influence has.
well,
It
let,
seems that Mike Kafka does have a good pulse of what's going on around him, at least.
well, let me ask you one question. You grind film. From what you've seen to this point, did it look like Bowen lost the defensive locker room? Did you see lack of effort, lack of hustle, lack of heart, as opposed to just, well, poor scheme?
This year, no. But
Last couple weeks. Last couple
last
weeks.
year, yes. So I mean, on film, no, I didn't see anything that was just like they're not trying. But there are things that you don't forget, right? Like Brian Burns having tantrums when they lose games and saying things that drop eight bullshit again, whatever. That kind of stuff definitely speaks to a lack of respect for their leadership. And I don't mean like as in they're disrespecting them, but just as in they literally don't respect their expertise. They don't feel like they're being led properly. I had heard some things through I guess a league source, someone much closer to a player than I ever will be. Um, Essentially saying that the locker room had no respect for Shane Bowen. They didn't
Mhm.
think that they were not bought in, I guess is what I should
And,
say.
and,
Now
and here's
now
the
listen. There is something to say for that. After 1 year, there are definitely moments in history where teams and players are not bought in, and it takes a moment for them to finally buy in. Some days the light bulb does click on. So that in and of itself sounds the most damning, is hearing that players are literally saying, like, I don't like this guy. I'm not buying into it. The system isn't going to work, whatever. As bad as that sounds, that can completely 180 at a certain point in a season
Mhm.
for a person. So it's not, a doomsday thing, but
I
yeah, I mean, I didn't see anything that did you? I mean,
Well, I didn't, but here's something that I always remembered hearing back from college was you don't quit on a team on Sunday. You
mhm,
quit on a team Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Are you really grinding, during practice? Are you giving all that you need to do in the film room? Are you really mentally prepared to play on Sunday? Because, when you get to Sunday, everybody, in the heat of a battle, these guys are all ultra competitors and they want to win a game they're playing. But if kind of country club it on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're tuning out the head coach, you're tuning out the coordinator, you're tuning out your position coaches. I don't care how hard you play on Sunday, you're not ready to win.
mhm.
So that's something, again, we will never know now. And maybe somebody will tell us in the off season, like what was this team like at Quest on a Wednesday before the Detroit game?
Yeah, and that's fair. I know that this is part of his scouting report, so him being on defense is somewhat coincidental. But I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Abdul Carter, right?
Hmm.
Not really necessarily performing on Sunday the way you hope, um, although not playing poorly. Um, and you find out he's been consistently late to meetings all year and missed a walkthrough because he was asleep, either
So the
getting treatment or tired, whichever.
so the question becomes: is that an Abdul Carter thing, or is that, oh, this is the way the culture is here?
Yeah.
You can kind of, you always want to push a little bit, and if you see everybody who's just kind of lollygagging around and doing whatever, especially a young, impressionable rookie trying to figure out his way in the NFL.
And I think there's other evidence though. There's to the evidence to the contrary. I think that Cordell Flott has taken the opportunity that was presented to him this year and 100% has given everything. He's left it all out on the field and earned every dollar that he's going to get in this offseason, whether it's here in New York or
Yeah,
somewhere else.
but Cordell Flott's been around for a couple of years now. I'm talking
He
about someone
has.
like
Yeah.
someone like Abdul Carter who doesn't know right from wrong, doesn't know the way it should be, is not, in an NFL
I know what you
perspective.
mean. It's just funny
Yeah.
to hear. Um, any thoughts on going to Charlie Bullen, the outside linebackers coach, as interim defensive coordinator, or not really anything crazy?
Not really. It's just, when you think about, when you elevate a position coach, that position loses coaching time because
Sure.
that coach is now focusing on the entire defense. So, linebackers had not been stellar this year, and now they're not going to have as much coaching as they did potentially. So, I think those are this is the what now, and okay, you got rid of the bad guy. What now?
Yeah.
Is this going to make your defense better? Is he going to come in and say, no, we're going to a 51 defense now. We're changing everything up. That's not happening. So I, this season just can't end fast enough. That's the bottom line.
So here's what I am. So yeah, I mean, anything I say about my thoughts on Charlie Bullen would be such high level speculation,
Mhm.
that it's not really worth talking about too much. What I will say is, I think people were a little surprised that it wasn't Andre Patterson or Marcos Manuel because they've both been defensive coordinators before. Um, I mean, I think it's kind of difficult to promote either one of those guys, in a sense, rewarding them when those are like almost inarguably the two worst defensive units. The defensive backs and the defensive
Yeah.
tackles have sort of let down most of these games, right? So it's kind of odd to pick either one of them. But I mean, also they're failed defensive coordinators. They were not
Right.
considered for the job when it was open. They were not.
They're
So
position coaches now.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, just the fact that they were defensive coordinators in the past, when taken with all other evidence with their time on the Giants, only means that they were failed defensive coordinators. So,
Yeah.
um, going to Charlie Bullen, I think was his name. Shit, now I feel stupid. going to him, I mean, you got a young guy. You know, my only thought process is that I'm interested to see what we see from him schematically, but also just on the sidelines, interacting with the players and talking to them and just seeing what kind of guy that he is. I've heard from a few people have tried to point to me that like those like giant social media puts out like the sights and sounds of the game or whatever. They've
Mhm.
said that he's been kind of on there a little bit. Um, and has done a good job of like, or at least seems like he's doing a good job of motivating the players and stuff like that. And what's interesting to me is that like the outside linebackers, like you said, have not really performed so well. Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, only really Brian Burns has the high production total. And you look back and Brian Burns has like 4 credited sacks this year that are sort of like the quarterback fell down and he's right there.
Okay,
Patrick Mahomes threw a
so then he's
pass
got
backwards.
so then
So
he has 8 sacks, which is still
which is
very
still
good.
good, but it's not
Right.
13. You know what I mean? It's a
Right.
significant difference, but and everybody else is kind of underwhelming. You put it all together, but I do think necessarily that like the hyper fixation on a position coach and technique needed to win your battles and just fixing your hand needs to be here and you gotta start punching more whatever like that's not necessarily the same skill set that you'd use if you're a defensive coordinator and you're looking more
Hmm.
big picture. Maybe you're more schematic. Maybe you're more X's and O's. Maybe you're more, game situation. Like now I'm going to blitz him. Now I'm going to hit him. I want to give him this look. And even game planning, right? Like
Sure.
game planning and how you want to attack and how you study offenses and stuff like that is a different skill set, I think. Again, I've never worked in the NFL, but I think it goes to like most other jobs. Like the low level and middle level management is a different skill set than
Yeah.
upper management,
Yeah, I was gonna say a lead is different than a manager. Like a lead is the person who knows the job,
Mhm.
has done the job, but the manager is the one who puts them all in the best place to succeed from a 10,000 foot level. So yeah.
And usually has like the longer plan of attack in general. Like we need to
Mhm.
do this over a 3-year period kind of thing, whereas a lead is worried more about probably quarterly
Uh,
bullshit.
Let me ask you a question, a little more higher level, but how much, as we're looking at Kafka and we're looking at Bowen going for the rest of the season, how much do you put into every game, every play being an evaluation of them, like an audition for the job going forward? Or is it even fair to do that based upon the state of the roster right now and just the overall culture of shit, I'll call it?
Well, I think doing anything week to week is usually a folly. But I'll
Fair-
say this: it's
Well,
early enough. It's early
yeah.
enough. There's plenty of games left where I think you can at least take it cumulatively at the end
Well,
and
that's what I was
judge
gonna
them.
say. I was gonna say, but that was my point. Not like, okay, Kafka should be the coach because he had 2 trick plays. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like they're gonna get Kafka's gonna get 8 games. Is it fair to judge him on these 8 games? Is there enough things you can do other than just wins or losses or based on the talent level that's playing right now to say, okay, I've had a pretty good evaluation? Because remember, we they always say players need to still play and be professionals because there's always tape on them. This is kind of like building tape on these coaches too.
Hmm.
My question is, how accurate is that tape on these coaches based on the hand they've been dealt with the roster they're working with?
Well, um, I don't see why it wouldn't be fair to look at an 8-game sample size and decide whether or not a guy deserves to interview against the other interviewees, right? Um,
That's fair, but just to
I mean,
say
because
you're the coach, because I,
well,
I
Well, I
suppose
mean,
in
well, think about it, right? So, I mean, obviously, more times than not, your interview candidates are not coming from a team that has a roster issue or is just bad. You know, what I mean, they're
Mhm.
usually coming out of like Ben Johnson comes out. The Lions, at one point, the Eagles, both Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen were pulled um, to go to 2 different teams in Indianapolis and in Arizona. So, I mean, typically that's what you're going against, but I mean, what do you have more insight into? Do you have more insight into an 8-game sample size of a guy that you can at any time have a free conversation with and you know every little detail of every bullshit he's ever had to deal with? versus a guy who maybe is a 1-year offensive coordinator, never been a head coach either, on a really good team, and you don't know anything about what went on there. You just know the results, and you give him an interview, and you get the same information that you get. So, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't. If you're impressed with the 8 games, basically what I'm saying is if you get the 8-game sample size from Mike Kafka, and you're right there, you have free access to all of the information that you could possibly know about Mike Kafka because it's your building. You own it. You're the owner.
Mhm.
If you're impressed enough that you would be like, I'd interview. Yeah, I think he's earned an interview, whatever. Like, you have more information at your disposal to know all of the things. Like, why not?
Well,
Versus, some coordinators have like one. They could think about Ben McAdoo. You know what I
well,
mean?
here's what I'm afraid of. Not that he's earned the right to interview for the job, that they think they're so impressed with him, they're like, we're taking the interim tag off, and you're just the head coach now.
I just don't think it's likely.
Or,
I
but
think. I mean,
my original point was that you're getting this information from the last 8 weeks of the season, but is that information good because of the crap he has to coach? Like, do you make coaching
mhm.
decisions that you normally wouldn't because, you know, I like for example, like the going forward on fourth down versus whatever in that game. It's like, is that partially influenced because this defense is total shit and I don't trust it? Where is your decision making, and if decisions goes wrong, are you looking at bad data? So I I'm not really sure.
Well,
That's
let me
why
say
I
this. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think
mm,
there's. I think there is almost a 0% chance that they're just going to name him the head coach. And part of
well,
the reason. Go ahead.
that's conspiracy crank right there, that they've already made that decision.
Yeah, that seems highly unlikely to me, especially because it's not like Brian Dable was fired simply because he was bad. It's because he was bad in several aspects of being a head coach. Most notably was that he couldn't seem to keep the badness out of the headline level, like easy optics problem, like going
Right.
into the blue tent, having meltdowns on the sideline, challenging plays that you're not going to win, just doing it because you're angry. Putting
Mhm.
theoretically putting Jackson Dart in harm's way, like all of these things that show up on Good Morning America or whatever. It's just like easy. You get a Fox News blip, like,
Right.
Giants fined $200,000 for, breaking concussion protocol, etc. Like, that is so egregious. Whereas, like, maybe if this truly were like a functioning organism where the roster's looking good and he's just simply not a good coach and that's
Right.
it, and you fire him and then you realize, well, he did assemble a good staff and this guy is a good coach, like, maybe then. But there's just so much they I think, and again, the Giants are notoriously far too worried about their image than they are about the image in the standings. um they
Well,
are going to. I'm almost afraid that our next head coach is going to be the most milk toast, like Pat Shermery, like, you know what I mean? Like, just
oh,
someone who's not going to cause a stir at all because they're so worried about that side of things that the pendulum's going to swing all the way away from, making bold, fearless decisions on the correct leader and just being, I just don't want to get in trouble or look bad kind of thing.
so like the worst thing that can possibly happen, ironically, is we win a few games down the stretch, and there's momentum building for the keep Kapka narrative. If this team, he's already lost two, loses three or four more, there's not going to be really any appetite at all for anybody to bring him back, or at least not without the interview process and competing against other possible candidates. But I just have this very sneaky suspicion that that decision's been made because I don't trust the top of this organization anymore. They
Mhm.
don't. They're not logical anymore. They don't run this as a 21st century. Remember that was the quote I was always using before. Like, why can't we need to have a coach and a front office that will run this organization as a 21st century, not a 20th century? And I feel like we're going back to the 19th century now, almost with Mara, the
Yeah.
way he thinks. So,
Yeah. Here comes the printing press.
yeah.
I guess that's sort of it on that.
Yeah.
After the game, Malik Neighbors wrote a tweet, and I'm not really going to read it verbatim, but essentially calling out the decision making on the 4th down drive at the goal line where Mike Kafka did decide to go for it. They didn't get it. And the Lions marched down the field from the 2-yard line into field goal range, kick a game tying field goal, and push things into overtime, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to the sequence itself later on, but more so on just the general Malik Neighbors tweeting and then deleting, but tweeting nonetheless. I don't know where. I mean, I think I can assume where you stand on this, but I mean, this is a fucking problem. I mean, this is where you don't really have control of your locker room anymore, and I don't think that Brian Dable had control over Malik Neighbors at all.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, this is the kind of shit that, like, I don't know. I mean, like, so I mean, I watched this game. I was next to an Eagles fan. Just talking about the season and whatever, and like he has no patience for AJ Brown and his shenanigans and any of the bullshit that goes on. And it gets down to the point where, and like the Eagles are a good team and he knows it. And like he's not like a delusional person or anything like that, but like these are the kind of things that even when you are a good team, this kind of shit, there's no time for this. There should
Well,
be no patience for any of this shit. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm just getting older and falling into a stereotype here, the stereotype being my handle, I guess, right?
yeah.
But I just like I don't understand. Like I'm never gonna tell somebody that they can't feel a way, but you don't need to tell the entire universe. It doesn't help
Yeah.
anybody, and it doesn't even help you. You're not gonna feel any better typing that out, and hitting send. It's not gonna fix anything. You've only done more damage, and in my opinion, they have not really reined in Malik Neighbors in any way, shape, or form, and that's Brian Dable's fault. But whoever the new coach is has to get that under control because,
Yeah.
like I said, like it's not something that gets cured by winning. In my opinion, I don't know. I don't know how you feel, but like that's the kind of thing that can continue to happen even when you have a good season, you lose a close game, and then that kind of stupid bullshit goes on. It starts something in the locker room, this, that, and the other thing. And I like Malik Neighbors. I'm not trying to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
could have been Micah McFadden on IR saying that. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Um,
I'm,
I don't know. I don't know where you land on the Neighbors
I,
tweet.
I'm conflicted on it. I agree with you. I agree with you about the fact that Malik Neighbors is just unmanaged, uncontrolled. He's a light version of OBJ in every way possible. He's not quite as talented as him. He's not quite as much of a malcontent as him, but he's a problem that needs to be dealt with.
I don't think he's in the same stratosphere as being the same kind of malcontent.
Yeah, that's right.
Until Malik Neighbors is sitting next to Lil Wayne.
Yeah, exactly.
But I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of me actually likes what he said, and hear me out for this,
Okay.
because we're so used to, athletes, coaches, owners saying nothing. Whenever they're asked a question, I don't know what you feel or think because you've been trained and coached to say, the standard cliche, and it's a waste of time. However, two things with this. One, he wasn't asked a question how you feel. He tweeted it. He just threw it out there. No one asked him on the sideline, what do you think of this play calling? And instead of giving the standard answer, he just went out and was like, this sucks. No, he on his own vent his frustration and said it. And the second thing, which is a big rule of mine, how I try to live my life, is inside the circle, inside the fence, inside my house. I will debate you. I will argue with you. I'll disagree with you. We will, for 10 hours have a discussion, a fight until we have a resolution. But as soon as my circle grows from here to here, unified,
Mhm.
you know, Cranky wife and I can argue for 12 hours about something, but when we go to our friend's house, everything is good. You know, Grump and I, and we don't do this, don't start anything, but we could debate for sure about how I want the direction of this show to go. But when we're talking to anybody else or on this show, we're on the same page. And especially teams, where teams are, it's not just talent, it's not just practicing, but a team is your brothers.
Mhm.
You have to be able to trust, offensive line has to completely trust the guy next to him. Quarterback has to completely trust his offensive line. And you have to be unified in what you project to the rest of the world. As soon as you do, you break that trust and, go rogue, everything falls apart. So as much as the little part of me that was like, oh, great, I'm glad that's what he's thinking. I'm glad to know what he's thinking. There is damage, and opening the curtain for the world to see is not a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what's frustrating about it for me is that like what you're calling out is you're calling out a guy coaching his second game ever. You know what I mean? Like you're not sitting here in a losing
Well,
season pointing out, well, this is why we're losing. It's like, well, Mike Kafka's only been the coach for this game and the last
well,
game.
well.
So
Let's look at
it's
the
it
tweet. Look at the
okay.
tweet. He wasn't calling out Kafka necessarily. He was like, "Are we
No,
tanking this on purpose?" That was
I guess
that's
that is sort of what he said. He
that's
said
an organizational
sometimes,
shot.
but
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense because
I agree with you on that point.
okay,
But
yeah.
that's what he was.
I mean, you're not even in this game the way that they are, where they have a lead against the
Hmm?
Detroit Lions if you're tanking anything. I mean, and again, we've over the years that we've had this show, nearly a decade, by the way, that we've been running this show, we've went over what tanking is by definition and what it can be by like extension
Mhm.
of a definition and kind of bending the rules or whatever. But like tanking in no way looks like what happened on Sunday.
Look, this was not a LeBron James tweet, which was been focus tested and very choreographed with his team to send a specific message to someone. This was an emotional text
Yes,
shot out at the heat of the moment. So
I get it.
there's no real logic behind it. There's frustration. And again, on the positive side for Malik Neighbors, I appreciate the fact that a guy that's out for the year
Yes, thank
can't
you.
can't can't be involved, but still gives a shit. I mean, how
Yes,
many times have you
amen.
seen guys just, I'm off to Bermuda and, I'll see you
Paycheck.
next year. So
Yeah,
that
I mean, right there, the fact that he's a competitor to the point where he's on IR and been on IR for so long that he's mad about a game that he's not in a season that means nothing anymore. He's still emotionally invested is a good quality and something that I am happy is a part of this team because I'll take that over lethargy and apathy any day. Um,
lethargy, good word.
thanks.
The Just
I
Giants word of the day is lethargy.
someone has pointed out our use of vocabulary on this show, so um,
Oh,
neither one of us, I think, won any spelling bees or literary
okay.
awards.
Okay, Roger, keep talking.
Yeah, jeez. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not like out on Malik Neighbors or anything like that. But this is definitely one of those moments where it's like this has got to be rolled in. Um,
He's not
let's talk
Kadarius
about
Tony. He's not
no,
Kadarius
no,
Tony. He's not OBJ, but I have my eye on you.
yeah,
And I'm at DEFCON 3 right now.
yeah. Battle stations, everyone. Okay,
Hmm.
so let's go into the series there because I don't have a problem with and Malik Neighbors mentions going for it on fourth down and not kicking the field goal to like, go up by 6 and whatever. I have no problem with going for it on fourth down in that scenario. My problem is my problem is the play calls, and I know it's easy to say that in retrospect. And am I saying anything at all? If in the first play they run some sort of Philly special, and Andrew Thomas catches a pass from Chris Manhertz or something like that for a touchdown. Am I sitting here complaining? Obviously not. But what I can tell you is that if I'm calling the plays in that scenario, if we're playing Madden or whatever, where I'm in that scenario where I'm the pilot. First play, you go from the 4-yard line to a 2-yard line with a handoff to Tyrone Tracy. Once you're on the 2-yard line, given that scenario, I am just handing it off to Devin Singletary 3 times.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously he's not Cam Scatterboo, but he is your power back. He's not been great at the goal line, but he's a savvy veteran. He's good at bouncing out of tackles and doing what he can do. Um, I'm bleeding the clock at that time. I'm playing the clock because if you don't get it on 4 downs from there and you bleed the clock and you take their timeouts out, you've just made it harder. You have to know what their kicker is. You have to
Mhm.
know that Jake Bates can hit it from the logo. You know what I mean? You have to know these things. And when you go for it on 4 downs there, you have to give them as few opportunities as possible to get to midfield. If you kick the field goal, okay, congratulations. Now they have to go all the way down and score a touchdown. But you know your run defense. It didn't take very long in overtime to score a touchdown, did it? So I'm okay with that. But you throw on 2nd down, it's incomplete, I think, to Theo Johnson, right? That's the one that Jameis Winston missed Theo by a couple of inches, which sucks. But now you stop the clock voluntarily. Then you do like this weird dumbass pitch play to Devin Singletary. I don't think that pitch play has worked all year, by the way.
No.
And you lose 4 yards, and now you're at fucking like 4th and 7. So now you have to throw. I'm just not getting cute anymore at that point. You got down to the 2-yard line. I'm just pounding it forward 3 times with Devin Singletary. At worst, you pound it twice and you're at the inch line. You still have Jameis Winston's quite a load that you can QB sneak for a touchdown too. I'm just not getting cute there. I'm just not doing it. So, I mean, that's my issue with it. At the end of the day, you know, I'm complaining essentially about one pass play that Jameis missed by a couple of inches that easily could have been a perfect pass, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. This whole episode goes totally differently. So, I
Oh,
mean, I'm not sitting here livid with Mike Kafka based on the decision making. I can just easily say, like, yeah, I would not have called those plays. Just saying.
I I was a little livid because again, I think I am a
Oh,
little
in the
more.
moment, I was pissed, but yeah.
No, 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 no. The decision to go for it because to me, I think I'm a little more conservative if I was a coach than I think probably what's right for the NFL today. But to me, you go ahead and you score a touchdown. You know, the way the kickoff rules are and the way these guys are kicking field goals now, it's too easy. And I'm always worrying about, well, my problem maybe is just I worry too much about, well, what if I don't get the touchdown here? So but the only thing I can possibly give a pass to that did make me really outraged is we are playing Russian roulette with kickers. And I don't think there's much of any confidence in any of our kickers anymore hitting a normal field goal. And maybe it's just, what are we on our 4th kicker this year?
Youngwei Koo, I think, is our third.
3rd? All right, our 3rd kicker who blew a kick earlier in the game, blew an extra point, blew a kick.
No, I don't think so. I think we were okay in this game.
Or then it was last week or whatever.
Yeah.
But I,
Well,
I,
last week was super. I mean, we're in a dome. I don't think there was any issues in this game.
yeah, but I mean, that's the only thing I could probably say. Okay, if you're not rock solid that he's going to make this kick, maybe you go for it. But I personally, I would have made them go 75 yards, 65 yards, beat me that way. Now, of course, what could have happened would happen in overtime, one right up the middle, and that'd have been the game anyway, potentially. But I want to make it as hard for them as possible with as little risk for me to put them in that position as possible. So we didn't lose the game because of that play. Let's put it that way.
So that's where I look at it. Is I think that you could make a good argument for both, and I think that's why there is a debate. Is that you could make a good argument for both. Which
Yeah,
again, I'm not. I don't think that the decision to go for it there was, it's a super justifiable position to have. So I'll
sure,
just say it
sure,
like that. Yeah,
sure.
it's justifiable. You get enough people to agree with you, um, that it's not a fireable offense in any context, in my opinion. So
Right.
it just is what it is, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Um, Game itself, shitload of fun. Gotta say, this is a top 5 most exciting game of 2025. I would say.
Good.
Um,
Said that before. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the 2 trick plays, by the way, the trick plays, both of them, the first one, in essence, in planning, worked flawlessly, right? Planning being
Sure.
Wandale
Sure.
Robinson went out there for like a short little like shallow cross route thing, and then just kind of like acts like he's gonna block, but he knows he's not really part of the play, and then just sort of drifts, and now he's all alone. And you
Mhm.
do this like I don't remember exactly, somehow or another, it's in Devin Singletary's hands, way off to to the right side of the field. Then he turns and does a throwback pass to Jameis Winston, who's got somebody bearing down on him, and Devin Singletary's got to sort of like twist his body to make a throw. Low-key good throw from Devin Singletary back to Jameis Winston, who's now got two guys coming down on him, and he's got to launch it to a wide open Wandale. So, the execution of the trick part of the trick play was flawless. The play part of the trick play came down to some really good individual efforts.
To be very honest, Winston's reception and yak might have been one of the best ones I've seen from any receiver this year. And that's not hyperbole, and that's against my Winston bias too. That was a hell of a play. To
that
the point,
second trick play, what you're talking about, none of that worked. It was the exact, the trick itself didn't work. Jameis Winston wasn't open. Gunnar Olszewski essentially had to throw the pass back shoulder because he wasn't open. Jameis Winston has to adjust to a throw mid-flight and, comes back, makes a good catch, and then breaks a tackle from a good defender. And not only does he break the tackle where it's like, he slips the tackle, as a quarterback, there's not one person, not one football fan would have a problem with him just kind of coasting out of bounds, where he was sort of like right on that sideline there. No, he fights out of it and then walks into the end zone. That was some real athletic shit from everybody on that play.
I don't remember if I texted you or Gary and Ron and Bruce from our, 124 crew, half joking, half seriously. Is Jameis now the third best wide receiver on this roster?
Yeah, that wasn't with me. I'd have remembered that one. That's funny.
That's with those guys, yeah. And I was kind of kidding, but also kind of like, I think I'd rather have him than Gunnar Olszewski running routes.
For real. And another player that had a goddamn good game, Wan'Dale Robinson.
He sure did.
Yeah, I think he ended with like 140 yards or something like that, and the long touchdown. He was catching just about everything thrown his way. Not a lot of easy catches. Essentially got speared, I think, by Brian Branch, where he got the additional penalty on that too. Got right back up. I have come around so much on Wan'Dale Robinson over the years. I was really low on the draft pick. Not of the player, but just I was like, second round for this guy. Like that, and you see the limitations in the size and the arm length and stuff, and you look at him in the context of the Dable offense, and slowly over time I realized it's like, this dude does break about 4 tackles for his size, like what he's able to do. If he could just be put in a situation where he's not catching the ball at the line of scrimmage, he'd have a lot more yards. Like if he were already 8 yards downfield, we'd be looking at a guy breaking 2 tackles and going for 17, 18, 20 yards, as opposed to a guy catching the ball at the line of scrimmage and gaining 4 yards.
Was this just a coaching misassessment of what his skill set is the first couple years of his career?
I think
like the routes he was running,
I think the routes he was running. Look, I mean, we have to really look at the context of the offenses that were being run the last couple of years. Daniel Jones was healthy for like a percentage of those seasons.
That's true. That's fair.
And now you've got the likes of Tommy DeVito, Tyrod Taylor, Drew Lock. I mean, I'm sure there's another awful name in there somewhere.
Jake Fromm.
No, that's Joe Judge era. There was somebody else bad though. I mean. That's
another bad Georgia quarterback. Yeah. I can't give his name.
I think that had a lot to do with it. I think Wan'Dale's use this year is closer, and I think it had to do with both quarterback play and offensive line play over the years. So you have a lot of quick passes, a lot of using Wan'Dale as an extension of the running game because you got no other option. I think it had more to do with that.
It's only been 2 games, but is it still too early to make an assessment of, the offense really being very different under Kafka's play calling, or is it kind of a continuation of what we've seen?
I mean, he's certainly stuck to the run pass kind of offense. Now, of course, how fair is it to really judge, any changes in offense when you have the first time that you're going to a different quarterback, who's not he's not your chosen starter, right?
Right.
The true test is going to be seeing how Kafka deploys Jackson Dart, and that's what I'm really trying to hone in on, because I'm not entirely sure how much the concussion thing is going to influence play calling in the first game. So like I really don't think that we're going to have a good idea. Like if you ask me next week, even after Jackson Dart plays, I'm still going to asterisk the shit out of the whole thing because we don't know.
If he plays.
Again, yeah, he's got to fully pass the protocol. I think that he will. But
and the other thing too is don't let the trick plays cloud your judgment about, oh, Kafka's opening up the offense. They're trick plays. Trick plays are just like anomalies.
That's what bad teams do.
Yeah, one-timers. It's not you don't have a better offense because you run trick plays and you execute trick plays. It's just desperation.
So I mean, there are very few exceptions to that. There are like Ben Johnson might be one of them, but there are just certain coaches that are so out there mindset wise that trick plays are almost part of the fabric of who they are. Maybe a little bit of Andy Reid too, right?
Sirianni a little bit. I mean, he ran a Philly special in the Super Bowl.
Was that him or was that Doug Peterson?
Wasn't that Sirianni?
I'm suddenly forgetting. I don't remember.
I don't remember. I'm getting old. I don't remember.
It doesn't matter. But
I'm sure someone will criticize us.
But basically what I'm saying is there are very few exceptions to what you just said. The reality is 99 times out of 100, what a trick play is designed to do, it's essentially like getting like a freebie turnover. You're getting a freebie one-time outside the box play that tips the scales in your favor. And the only time you really do anything like that is when you feel like the scales are already tipped against you. And that usually is because you're just playing a team that's that much better than you, or you're just that much worse than everybody.
All right, guys, before you kill me, it was Doug Peterson who did it in that Super Bowl.
I mean, I don't blame you for mixing that up. I don't pay attention to other teams' problems. So, yeah, but at the same time, like there is something to be said about the deployment of trick plays, the execution of the trick plays from the players too. I mean, there's definitely something to that working. If you're truly looking at Mike Kafka as, what he's doing is an audition for whatever, like trick plays are a part of football. Like it is not a full on gimmick.
But don't
you don't depend on them.
Yeah, and don't conflate that with, oh, the offense is better or he's a better thing because they're running trick plays.
But if you're any of the 32 teams that are looking for a head coach, if you're any of the teams looking for a head coach around the league and you're considering interviewing Kafka, the execution and design of those plays are certainly something to, take into account. But yeah, it's not an improvement of the roster, team, or scheme because of the execution of those plays. Yeah, I would agree. I don't know. Anything kind of further on this game or any of the events of today, or you want to talk a little bit of the Patriots Monday night?
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is just they had I think towards late in the game they go remaining schedule, and when I saw 7 games left, I turned to Cranky Rife. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is never going to end.
Well,
and that's just how I feel. It's like it's just never going to end.
Let's talk about the remaining games because I know how you feel, because you remember Thanksgiving hasn't even happened yet. However, if you, I guess, want to consider that they just took the Lions into overtime as some sort of sign of, life of the team, you have the Patriots, which is a tough game coming up on Monday that we'll talk about for just a little sec. Then you have a whole bye week for people to get healthy. Remember, Paulson Adebo, Tyler Nubin, Kayvon Thibodeau did not play. Maybe. Jackson Dart didn't play in this game. So some guys can get healed up. Then you have the Commanders with Marcus Mariota. You've got the Vikings with J.J. McCarthy. And you've got the Las Vegas Raiders. So in the remaining 5 games, 3 of them is not outlandish to think that they could win those games, right?
Especially because, we just played Denver and we played teams close.
Going into...
We could have, should have won.
Yeah, we could have, should have won. But also... Again, and I don't want to pit myself against others or whatever, but like to generalize and group people. If there was a group of people that were Giants naysayers this year as to, like, how do you feel, whatever. So the common theme was historically difficult schedule. So, even if you take some of the known issues out, and it's not, whatever, you can't do that, but like, this was always going to be a difficult year. We knew that. So,
because we knew at some point we're going to go to Jackson Dart also, so you're gonna throw a rookie up against these teams, and it just all went bad. It's gone bad in every possible way, within the micro of each game as opposed in the macro of the entire season. I mean, we had to fire a coach. We had to fire a defensive coordinator. We went to a rookie. The rookie got hurt. The promising running back rookie got hurt. The best weapon on the wide receiver, he got hurt. The secondary's ravaged. They're all hurt. All of these things, that and at the end of the day, we're in position to win these games, and losers lose.
Yeah, this one did feel a little loser-losey. But again, I look back at this, and I'm like, why the hell did Detroit only run 20 times? Like, I'd have been running it 40 times and throwing it 20 times.
And still beat us.
It would have crushed the shit out of us. But, all right, so any thoughts on first of all, a possible Jackson Dart Drake May showdown? What are your thoughts going in on Monday night against the Patriots?
I have a bad feeling we're not going to see Jackson Dart until after the bye. And I almost kind of am hoping for that, because Jackson Dart is the future. I want him to be 100%, as close to 100% as I can get him to play. And let's put it this way. If Dable was still the coach, I'd be very worried they're going to force him out there before he's really ready to play.
What does that mean? I'm never going to understand this. Concussions are not any other injury. He's either cleared or he's not. There's no gray area with this injury.
Well, just because you're clear doesn't mean you may not be ready to play. You may still have some cobwebs.
I don't think that's how it works.
I mean, if you're doing the test with your eyes and all these different things, you're like, okay, you're cleared. Does that mean you're necessarily ready? Are you still, you're not feeling any impact at all from a concussion?
No, because
nothing.
The tests can't be like, you can't pass the test and then go. The tests are reliant on lingering symptoms the next day. So you're not out of the protocol until you have no symptoms the next day. So you can't just feel better on Tuesday and then you're just cleared. You have to feel better on Tuesday and then have nothing again on Wednesday, that kind of thing. And that's how you get released. It's not like, so, and again, like, I'm not trying to whatever, like, concussions are a big deal. I totally get where your head's at. And I've heard this from other people too. So whatever, but this is the one injury where it's not like a soft tissue injury or, a bruised something or, more than anything, like the hamstring and calf issues and stuff like that, or groin issues, where it's all soft tissue and it's like, oh yeah, I'm good today, and you practice and you suffer a setback. Like, the setback happens while you're in the protocol. When you're out of the protocol, there's not really any setbacks left. That's the whole point, is to prevent any like setbacks with the brain, because whatever. So cleared just means cleared. I mean, at that point, whatever holding out you're doing is really just for your own peace of mind. I don't really know what else. You're essentially overruling doctors at that point.
Yeah. I guess if we were fighting for something, I'd be more, I want to get him back as fast as I can. I guess
that I get. Yeah.
In a dead season where Jameis actually is playing well, maybe you just say, let's give him another 10 days.
One more game, what we're talking about.
Yeah. It's not, he could still practice during Monday through Friday, go through all the, everything, but just sit him out for one game, get the extra week, and come back and be ready to go.
Yeah, and I think part of that, when you're talking specifically about Jackson Dart, one of the things you're probably worried about as you're running through practice is kind of reining in, I guess, a little bit of not as edge, not as competitiveness, but just spending that week where he's not even playing, reinforcing like scramble and slide and that sort of thing, and run out of bounds. Again, I'm going to say this until I die, I feel like, at this point, but the game in which he sustained the concussion was the game in which he actually was protecting himself very well, sliding, going out of bounds, not taking unnecessary hits, had an unfortunate hit in an unfortunate moment. but it
Any
is
oth-
what it is.
any other thing too, this is important that Brian Dable was connected to him at the hip pretty much from the day he got here.
Sure.
And Brian Dable is gone.
Mhm.
So maybe that little extra time of a reset of this is the way we're doing things now and build a little more of that relationship with Kafka, which I'm not saying he didn't before, but when we bring him back, let's make sure he's really ready and acclimated to the new way things are done. So I don't, I'm not, this team doesn't need to win at any cost in a meaningless season. Let's look at the bigger picture. So I'm a little more cautious, probably.
Yeah. Um, how do you think that game's going to go Monday versus Patriots? So are you predicting that Jackson Dart doesn't play, or are you just
I,
hoping for that?
I'm predicting he's not going to play.
Okay.
I think you know, when you don't, again, this is anecdotal to me or just my gut instinct, but when you have a second week in the protocol, maybe it's a little more serious than people think it is.
Mm.
So I just, if it would have been, 1 week always back in, I would probably wouldn't have thought of it again. But I get a little nervous when guys are into the second week, which means there's probably a third week. So I, hoping wise, if based on your analysis of, what the protocol is and if he's fine, I'd like to see him out there. I mean, I don't want to waste 3 hours. I don't want to watch Jameis Winston a second longer than I have to. I want to see the future too.
Sure. Yeah. Um,
I think we're going
I
to lose. We'll lose.
yeah.
There's no reason for me to predict them going to beat anybody else the rest of the season because they're not good and they find ways to lose. So why would I predict them to win on the road against a potential Super Bowl team?
Yeah. Um, I don't know. They were just on the road against a potential Super Bowl team. They were playing without Jackson Dart. They were playing without Paulson Adebo. I think that they can hang around. I would not be surprised if they pull off a quote unquote stunner. They would have pulled off a quote unquote stunner this week if they had
Hmm?
closed the deal. Same thing with Denver. The list goes on. But um,
All of these games that they're in, they're eventually going to win one of them. And the thing that's optimistic is, well, they're in
well, you
all
could
of
you,
these
you could say
games.
that the Eagles were that game.
I mean, oh, just never in it to begin with.
No, the first Eagles game that they won, that
Oh
was
yeah,
one of
yeah.
those ones that I think you could say they did win that game. They didn't blow it. And then like
Hmm.
I think I made this argument at the time is that they easily could have, right? Like the Cordell Flott pick happened on a drive. The Eagles were just matriculating down the field, down the field, down the field. And
Hmm.
then, just a slightly imprecise throw from Jalen Hurts, Cordell Flott pouncing all over it, and not only gets the pick but returns it so far
Right.
that he flipped the field,
Hmm.
and all the time that had been wasted on that drive for no
But
points.
but a lot of these games, every one of these games is turning into a 50-50 game, and it's just like
Yeah,
almost like the law of averages. Like at some point, they can't keep shooting themselves in the foot. At some point, they're actually
but that's
gonna.
what I'm saying. Like that
Mhm.
game easily could have been the double-digit lead they had in the fourth quarter that they lost. It's just that I
Yeah.
think that the pick came at the right time.
Right.
That was a game where the Eagles score a touchdown on that drive, are you feeling in the back of your mind in the context of this season like, oh, here it comes. This is it. This is where it all unravels. Because I certainly would be.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. I
so
mean, could they win Monday? Sure. Will I pick it? No.
I wouldn't put money on it. Um,
Right.
I'll have to see. What I'm interested in seeing is the development of the injured guys, right? Like this is whatever happened to Dexter Lawrence significant? Is it, or is it like an in the moment kind of situation? Whatever happened to him? What's the deal with Paulson Adebo is a huge deal, right? Like
Hmm.
everyone they've trotted out at corner two this year has been a disaster. Does
Yeah.
Tyler Nubin play? Obviously, just Jackson Dart play. Those things are all going to influence my actual prediction. But I do think that regardless of any of those things, I think that this will be a close game. Um, I have a tremendous respect for Mike Rabel. Um, and I think that this Patriots team is somewhat for real, but they are also in the stage where like their roster is starting level deep, right?
This is also their first. This is their first big prime time game, right? Have they been on Sunday or Monday night yet this
Um,
year?
I watched the fucking, what was
They
those
played
nor'easter uniforms? Is that the Thursday night game?
they played the Jets on a Thursday, but even then,
Yeah.
that's not as big as Monday Night
Oh,
Football.
of course not, because you're playing the Jets.
Right. And you're on Amazon and it's not the same.
Yeah, I was just making a joke.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I certainly don't feel good, but I think it's the hardest game left on the schedule. I just ran through the three that follow in the bye week, and then they close against the Cowboys, who are
For sure.
figuring things out. And they've Cowboys have a tremendous wide receiver group with George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb and Cavante Turpin and this, that, and the other thing. So, the Cowboys are definitely going to be no slouch, but I would say the Patriots are the scariest team remaining on their schedule, right?
Oh, agreed. And that week 17, who knows? It could be meaningless for the Cowboys and they tried out a bunch of backups too. We don't know.
That's that's true also. So
Yep. Yep.
the Shane
Alrighty.
Bowen era comes to an end the same time, the same year as the Brian Dable era. Um, and we'll see how long this brief Mike Kafka era continues, if it goes through into next year, or if this is just to close out um, a chapter in the John Mara Book of Giants. Um, so Thanksgiving this week. Make sure you're thankful. I don't know, Cranky, what are you
Please.
thankful for in this horrible season? Think about that while I wrap this up. So we have Thanksgiving on Thursday, um, and football all day. Praise be. And then next week we have the Patriots on Monday, which means our episode is probably going to be on Wednesday, most likely. Because we'll probably record Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So
I would say be thankful for all the good things you have and be thankful for your family because, as much as, this football team and the Gators and all these things make you upset and angry and mad in the grand scheme of things, it is very, very small potatoes. And as bad of a football week I had this week was really nothing compared to losing an aunt and, having a dad in the hospital and all these other things going on. So, be thankful for your friends and your family that, as long as you're all healthy together, cherish those times. And, you know, we'll keep doing this show for, as long as we, are possible and we'll still love our Giants and we'll be pissed off when they lose and celebrate if they win. But in the grand scheme of things, the important stuff matters more. So just keep on plugging. As I've been telling
yeah,
everybody all week, keep on plugging.
I would say thankful for everybody, right? Like
Hey,
I can watch the Giants and enjoy them
yeah.
alone and in solitude,
I,
or we have this great community. You and I have each
it,
other,
it,
and
I wanted,
it's good to have everybody like that.
there's one other person. I'm thankful for Bobby because, is, our stupid little show here. We've been on for a while, but, we have our little core group, but Bobby has introduced you to so many more Giant fans and so much more exposure out there. And I've said it since day one, even before we started this, that you need to be discovered. And,
Mm.
Bobby gave you the opportunity. So, you know, I really appreciate him and, being friends of the show, of their show and everything. So, and also, I also want to give, a thanks also to Justin because, him and Bobby built, together built Talking Giants and Justin's still doing good work on Talking Giants also. So, he helped, give us a platform and help with Grump getting to where he is today too. So, we haven't forget you. I know we still bitch about the Knicks all the time, but Justin, but I'm thankful for him also for what he's done for us and particularly for you. So
Well, 100%. And like I said, like the whole community that we have, with whether the Giants are good or bad, having each other. And I
yeah,
think back to when Bobby was with his former show, and they had the watch party for the 2022
yeah.
Vikings game. I mean, just think
And
about all of those people all in that room watching the game. We're all connected, not
and
just in the team that we like, but in our specific subgroup of fans. And I'm just thankful that
I
all of us are
and
in one way or another friends. All right, so enjoy your Thanksgiving, everybody.
yeah,
Um, we will talk again next week, hopefully after a Giants victory, almost certainly after a good Giants game. So, we will talk again on Wednesday. Until then, Go
Go
Giants.
Giants.